Thank you, Daryl. So my name is Brianna Morris. I work at Edmonton Global. A big part of my role is studying how we can be more globally competitive as a region and attract more investment. One question I get asked a lot is tell us how the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act affects Canada. And so we have with us Joe Yurkovich. He's a partner at Miller Thomson, and he has some great answers and insights for us today. So thanks for being here.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me, Brianna. So the Inflation Reduction Act has really stimulated the Canadian push towards some sort of investment tax credit for clean hydrogen. And in their fall economic statement last year, the federal government did say that they were going to introduce something like that. And in fact, in this year's budget, they set out the guidelines for a clean hydrogen investment tax credit. So what that is that if you are purchasing equipment that will be used all or substantially to produce hydrogen, then you'll get a tax credit for any equipment that is put into use and for the cost of putting it into use, depending on the carbon intensity of the hydrogen that you're producing. I know you have some questions about how that compares to the IRA and the program there. Our tax credit will start to kick in at a carbon intensity of 4 kilograms of carbon per 1 kilogram of hydrogen produced, which is the same level as the United States, and it increases from there. In Canada, the tax credit regime is that at the lowest intensity carbon, you would get a 40% tax credit, and that goes up until the year 2034. In 2034, the credit starts to get phased out to 50%. In 2035, there's no credits. And then the lowest credit in Canada would be at a 15% rate. In comparison, the IRA has a maximum credit of 30%, and I think their lowest credit is 6% on the investment tax credit. The U.S. is a little bit different in that, in addition to the investment tax credit, they're also offering a production tax credit. And so what that would be, and that's an alternative to the investment tax credit, but what that would be is a credit that you would get once your facility is up and running, and for 10 years they would pay you this tax credit based on the amount of hydrogen actually produced. So it would have nothing to do with the equipment purchases. So a little bit different, but at least we're starting to get into the game in Canada with the tax credits.
Okay, interesting. So I understand there's different ways of producing hydrogen. Can you tell us what just a few of those are? And does the tax credit apply to all of those processes? Yeah.
So again, this is another difference between the IRA and the Canadian regime. In the United States, they've said that they're going to offer these credits for any type of production, again, measuring it against the carbon intensity. But in Canada, the budget proposal is that the credit will only apply for 2 ways in producing hydrogen. Number one would be through water electrolysis, and that's the green hydrogen that people talk about. And the second way would be through use of natural gas. And natural gas is one of the ways in which you can produce what's called blue hydrogen, of course. And there's 2 methods, the SMR and the ATR methods of producing blue hydrogen. Right now, the steam methane recovery method is the one that's commercialized. Although I noticed on the program today, someone is talking in the technical side of the conference about the other ATR methods. So obviously that's one that we may be seeing in Alberta soon as well.
So tell us more about how the Canadian tax credit works. So you mentioned there's an investment tax credit, the production tax credit in the U.S. So do we have several kinds of investment tax credits in Canada, did I see?
Well, there are different types of investment tax credits in Canada. You can get some for other types of innovation, but the one that we're talking about with the clean hydrogen is, as I said, based upon the fact that you are buying equipment that would be used exclusively or substantially all for the production of hydrogen. Now, there are, I should say that there's no regulations yet, so this is all just pretty general in the budget materials. But what they're talking about is that when you look at whether you are producing all hydrogen or substantially all hydrogen, they actually will allow you to put excess electricity back into the grid, so and not count that against the threshold of all or substantially all hydrogen production. And then, as I mentioned, there is this carbon intensity measurement, and the federal government has some guidelines to measure the life cycle carbon intensity of natural gas production, and they'll apply that to hydrogen production as well. Again, the budget materials talk about a verification process, and they're not even sure how frequent that process would be applied. But there will be a verification process to go into your plant just to make sure that the carbon intensity of the hydrogen being produced meets the level that you've claimed the investment tax credit for. And as I said, those investment tax credits go from maximum 40% down to 15%. There's one other little feature to the investment tax credit, and again, this picks up on what's in the U.S. IRA. They have a labor component in it as well. In the United States, the credit is subject to a 5 times multiplier if you meet certain labor thresholds. One is that you have a fair wage through some U.S. standard, and the second is that you have 15% of the employees being apprentices. So that is, if you meet those thresholds, then you get up to this 30% and reduced level of credit. In Canada, the labor requirement is that you pay a wage that is on a comparable scale to a referable union employment agreement. So basically, they want union wages being paid, and it's a 10% apprentice requirement. And if you don't meet those thresholds, then your investment tax credit would be reduced by 10%.
So you mentioned, so there's a verification process for carbon intensity, there's the labor requirement, and I think you mentioned earlier there's the timeline, 2034. Can you speak a little bit more to what timelines we're looking at?
Yeah, that's right. So obviously they want people to get started right away, but they know that it takes a while to build these plants. So 2034 is the deadline. So you have up until that year to acquire and put the equipment into production. And then there's a phase out, as I said, for the year 2034, the credit would only be 50%. And then in 2035, there's no credit available at the present time. That's the intention of the program presently.
Awesome. This has been very helpful. Anything else you'd like to mention to listeners?
Well, my gosh. So I guess one of the things that I've learned from speaking to some people here today is that maybe a production tax credit might be useful to people in Canada. From the reading I've done, that's something that could be perhaps more lucrative to companies. On the other hand, there's more of an immediate benefit if you can, get the credit when you've put the equipment into use. I should also say that this is a refundable tax credit, so you don't need to be paying federal tax in order to obtain the credit. You can actually get a refund of tax if you make the application for the tax credit, and you don't have the taxes in that year that would allow you to just apply it against your tax payable. You can actually get a refund. So that's another advantage of the program.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point about the refundable, and that's a good idea. I'm going to look more into the production tax credit. So thank you so much, Joe, for your time. I know Miller Thomson you have a booth here in the exhibition. Is that right? We've got a booth here, and unlike a lot of the other law firms, the national law firms, we do have an Edmonton office, and we've got a lot of expertise in our office that can help you with their construction contracts and
hopefully we don't have to use them, but we also have a good litigation group for our construction law practice. So
Awesome.
it's great to be here. Thank
Yeah.
you for the invitation, Brianna.
Yes, thanks so much for your time.